Okay, well, there we go. Got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah, welcome everyone for this lightweight alliance meeting for November. I'm Roberta McIntyre, and I'm the president and CEO of FireSafe Sonoma. So welcome everyone. And I expect folks will still be popping in for the next little bit. Hope to have a good audience, but it is getting close to the holidays, so probably won't have a huge audience. For those of you that are new to our alliance meetings, it's kind of like a all-inclusive platform for folks to just kind of engage and speak about, talk about, wildland fire risk reduction and safety. Like I mentioned, we're inclusive, so everyone's welcome. And as long as you're interested in wildland fire risk reduction, wildland fire safety, etc., that kind of topic, then you're welcome here to join us and speak out. Let's see. Yeah, I covered that. Housekeeping items, as you're aware already, if you've already joined and as you join, you'll notice that we are recording this meeting. We don't typically make the meetings public unless they're particularly remarkable, like last month's. But if somebody does have a particular interest in a meeting, if you catch us before we delete it, we're more than welcome to share it. If you ask for it, but otherwise it won't be posted on our YouTube channel or what have you. Keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. This is a meeting format, not a webinar format, so the ability to have us take control over you all is less robust. So just have to maintain a little etiquette if we could. And then if you do have a question, raise your hand. Ideally, it looks like we might have a small enough group that we might not to be policing that too carefully, but just to maintain some decorum, if we could do that, that'd be great. I'm really bad at not doing that in other meetings, as some of you have noticed. Mason Innumerable is our AmeriCorps fellow. He's with the Grizzly Corps program, and he's here to assist. So thank you, Mason. Mason does have to leave around 3 o'clock, I think. So when he pops out, he's just going to hand it off to me. With that said, I also have a strict time commitment post meeting. So my hope is to close the meeting by 3:40, 3:45 thereabouts. So with that said, we might not have time to go into breakout rooms like we typically would do. We'll see how it goes. I'm actually more interested in hearing the presentation and doing Q&A after that. Let's see, I mentioned we're recording. And then pay attention to the chat. We're using the chat to share information. Mason's going to drop stuff into the chat from time to time. And if any of you have your memory jolted and want to drop a website or information into the chat that you think is valuable enough to share with everyone, please feel free to do that. The chat is open for just throwing stuff in there that you think is relevant and worthwhile to share with all of us. We get a lot of good information in the chat sometimes. Okay, with that said, I'm going to do a few quick updates and then I'll introduce you to our presenters today and we'll dive into it. Some FireSafe Sonoma updates. We did receive notice of award for $175,000 funding for a 1 month hire, limited term full-time position for executive coordinator to help FireSafe Sonoma over the next year. Within the scope of that individual's workload will be to kind of more formalize FireSafe Sonoma as the countywide FireSafe Council /hub. One of the things we're going to do, we got permission from our board at our last meeting to fund a platform where folks can put in their projects. 4 types of projects relative to wildland risk reduction. One would be projects in development, second type would be projects developed seeking funding, Third would be projects funded and in progress. And then the fourth will be projects complete. So we want to kind of track those so we can all share what we're doing and know what's been done, what's hoping to get done, and what folks are doing in various areas of the county. It'll be specific and unique to Sonoma County. It'll be very much like the one that the resource conservation districts are using. Theirs, I think, is statewide. It has filters, you can narrow it down, but ours will be just specific and unique to Sonoma County projects. Fire Safe Sonoma is staying on top of the county-wide sales tax measure that is moving forward. I think it's going to be a sales tax measure. It feels like it. That's what it's being marketed as at this point. We chimed in at the supervisors meeting on Tuesday where they approved the hiring of a consultant to do a feasibility study. Basically, from what I can tell of the RFP, the scope of the work, basically they're going to do a survey to find out if this will fly or not. And then it's my understanding that that information will be presented to the board for their March meeting. And that at that meeting, the Board of Supervisors will make the determination as to if they're going to move forward. And if they do decide to move forward, will it be in the June 22 ballot or will it go to the November general election? So yeah, pretty squashy timeline in my opinion if they're trying to get it out to a ballot measure by June of 22. Yeah. Okay. So, and then I want to do a quick update with the CWPP. I talked to Carly on this morning she's not able to be here. So she kind of gave me the 411 on that. And basically the draft is just about ready to be presented for the steering committee. So the steering committee will review the draft prior to Thanksgiving. So by Thanksgiving, those of us on the steering committee will have eyes on it. And then we'll review it, kibitz about it, make our comments. Those edits will be folded in to that draft. And then the target is to have a draft for public review sometime in January. So stay tuned for that. Okay, and I mentioned my time constraint. With that said, I'm going to introduce Katie McNulty and Chief Richard Price. They're going to be telling us about PulsePoint. Katie McNulty, she's the Executive Director of REDCOM at AMR, American Medical Response. And REDCOM is our fire and EMS, our county fire and EMS dispatch center. And Katie will probably talk more about that in her presentation. And then Chief Richard Price, he's a founder and president of PulsePoint, and he's the retired chief for San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District. So the two of them are going to talk to us today about PulsePoint. And then PulsePoint, if you don't know, it's a free smartphone app that enables citizens to learn if there's a fire or other emergency near them. And as I understand it, PulsePoint was originally developed to connect people with nearby AEDs, automatic electronic defibrillators. So if you're at a restaurant and somebody, has a heart attack, you can go on the PulsePoint, and you guys will correct me if I'm wrong, and see if there's an AED nearby, and you can go, hey, there's an AED across the street in the library, somebody go and get it. Something like that is how I imagine. But then it's also become very popular in Sonoma County, as I understand it, for keeping track of the fires, particularly in wild, if there's a wildland fire nearby, or if you see smoke out there and you want to know what it's from, you could check PulsePoint, I think. But anyway, I might be wrong. I don't know. So I'm going to hand it off to Katie at this point. Katie, is that pretty accurate, or do you want to fine tune anything I said? And then maybe you guys can just fill out your bios. And with that, I'll hand it off to you guys.
I'm actually going to turn it over to Richard first for a PulsePoint overview, and then I'll do a 911 system overview of how PulsePoint works with our current 911 system.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Katie. All right, I'll get started. Well, welcome everybody. And Roberta, thank you very much for the invite. It sounds like maybe just giving a quick introduction to the genesis of PulsePoint would be useful here. So I just have a little personal story that I'll tell that, how PulsePoint got started. I was the fire chief in San Ramon Valley in Contra Costa County. And, we were doing a lot of work around cardiac arrest survival. These were things like training our citizens in CPR and placing AEDs in the community, making sure our crews had the latest training and the latest equipment. And we're really trying to make a difference around cardiac arrest survival. And there was an event where I was at lunch and I heard a siren and kind of listened to that siren drive all the way to where I saw it, and it pulled up in front of a restaurant where I was eating. And that's when I learned that just next door, somebody was unconscious, unresponsive. And even as the fire chief in that community, I wasn't aware of it. And it sort of showed a disconnect in what was possible, that we could have people trained in CPR, we could place AEDs, but if you didn't witness somebody have a cardiac arrest, then you really couldn't do anything. And so it was kind of shocking to me that I was so close. I was only on the other side of a wall from where this occurred. So that's where the idea came from, where the dispatch center would know where cardiac arrests were because, they were dispatching the firefighters. And I promised to get to wildland, but because of the basis of PulsePoint is cardiac arrest, I have to kind of start here with kind of the purpose of the foundation and how we got started. So I think just a quick story here is useful. So the dispatch center would know where a cardiac arrest was occurring. So San Ramon Valley had a dispatch center, and it, like every dispatch center, would send its firefighters and its paramedics to calls. It wasn't things that they saw, it was things that people would call in, dispatch center become aware of them, and then they would tell the firefighters and they would respond because they were close. The closest fire station, would get notified and they would respond. So we thought, okay, we know where the cardiac arrests are in the dispatch center, and modern cell phones at that time were just starting to be able to know their location. Cell phones today, they have GPS, they know exactly where they are. This was 10 years ago. That was kind of a new concept. And could we bring those two things together, where the dispatch center know where they were, the phones would know where they were, people could opt in and say, I'm CPR trained, let me know if I'm near a cardiac arrest. And that was the idea. And we spent about a year working on that. Had some good success with it, where people were being notified of an event, on the floor above them or in the business next door, and they were responding. And so it was very exciting, that this possibility that you didn't have to witness arrest, you just could be close enough that you could get there before the first responders, start CPR more often. And we also did tell them where all the nearby AEDs were, so that they would think about an AED and send someone for an AED. And when the crews arrive, they would already have CPR in progress, or maybe they would have a local AED brought to the scene. We had an event in Contra Costa County where council member had a cardiac arrest during a council meeting, and nobody retrieved the AED, and the AED was just right there in the council chambers. People didn't think about it and didn't retrieve it, and that council member died. And it was like those kinds of events, it was, high priority in the county to be really looking at these types of things. So the fire department, San Ramon Valley Fire, decided that there was interest from other agencies, that they didn't really want to be in the mobile app business. They had kind of done this one thing for one community. So they caused the PulsePoint Foundation to be formed. The fire department actually formed the foundation. PulsePoint's a 501c3 formed by San Ramon Valley Fire. They put one of their board members on the board of the foundation to recruit the other board members and get that foundation underway. A couple of years later, as that started ramping up, I retired from the fire department and then have run the foundation ever since. So its roots are in cardiac arrest response. but it has to have a real-time, very sophisticated interface to the 911 system to be able to, it has to be very, very fast, because, with cardiac arrest, right, people who have cardiac arrest only have maybe 10 minutes to survive. The crews are probably going to get there in 5 or 6 minutes. So you have this period of time, really less than 5 minutes maybe, that you're going to notify somebody nearby and get them there. So these are, real-time interfaces that also don't interfere with dispatcher operations. So the dispatchers aren't pushing a button to activate PulsePoint. PulsePoint is looking at the address, looking at the call type, looking to see if it has people nearby, and it's doing this all in an automated fashion behind the scenes. So there's no changes to the dispatcher workflow or anything the dispatchers are doing. So that creates an opportunity to do other things with that interface that are helpful to the community and to keep the community informed. So with that, I'm just going to start I just have a short slide deck that I wanted to use to just kind of guide my presentation and give you guys some visuals, so I'm not just talking to you. Okay, so let me just get started here. So PulsePoint Respond can just be downloaded from the App Store or Google Play. It is a free app. And this version that's in the store is designed for community members just like you, who are interested in staying informed of local emergencies, and those that are trained in CPR and willing to assist. So that's a big target of ours. But we also want an app that has daily usefulness, that people think about, talk about, use every day, keep on their phone. There's a lot of apps out there. You've all downloaded apps that, you download once and then you never use them again. So we want to make sure that the app is something that is interesting and useful, more than just if you're near a cardiac arrest, which might only occur, every few years or something. So these are cardiac arrests that are occurring in public places and you're nearby and you've opted in. So the odds of any one individual getting activated is not very good. Let me just walk through these screens. So this is what an alert looks like. It would show you, it would show the location of the cardiac arrest, the victim, and any nearby AEDs. And it would, at the bottom of the screen, it could give you CPR instructions, just sort of quick reminders if you needed them. And this is, again, only if the event is in a public place, you're nearby, and you've opted in. This is what the screen would look like. But in addition to that, we do show a list of most events that are occurring in the community. So these are all the other events. The events we don't show dangerous calls or calls of a sensitive nature. So these might be like a shooting we wouldn't show, or maybe a psychological emergency, those types of calls. But most calls are shown, and this varies from community to community, what the dispatch center, what the city wants to show. But having the units included is pretty useful as you're looking at like a vegetation fire. So even though PulsePoint has some strengths and some weaknesses around a vegetation fire, or around a lot of events, where we're strong is we're very fast. So we're going to give you this screen and notifications that go along with this at the same time that the firefighters are getting alerted. So it's very, very fast. Most of the times you're going to get an alert before the firefighters have left the station. They're getting dispatched kind of the same time you're getting the notification. Now with that, and firefighters will tell you this, a lot of times they're going to be responding to reports of fire or reports of lots of things, reports of a vehicle accident, other things, and they get there and, oh, it's a barbecue that somebody saw the flames on, or it's popcorn in the microwave. So that's a weakness of PulsePoint, is we're giving you information fast. It is the reported incident type, but it isn't always what actually is occurring, because that takes time to sort out. So it can cause, and I'm sure that you have all seen this, where you see a vegetation fire that's near me. I want to know what's going on. I want more information. And, you know, this is just minutes into the event. It might just be one caller. Not a lot is known yet. So fast, but early, which is going to have some inaccuracies. That's inaccuracy to you, inaccuracy to the firefighters, inaccuracy to the dispatch center. But I would use this as a fire chief. I would say be out to dinner, and I wouldn't want to have a radio with me. You know, it's a Saturday afternoon, I'm at brunch or something, but I would get the alert, and I would actually use PulsePoint. I'd get the alert and I'd watch the event right on this screen. And I would see either units clearing that incident, or I'd see units getting added to the incident. So just watching resources would be one way to know this is a de-escalating event or this is a growing event. So just a little trick of that. But this is the incident display. Medical incidents are shown on here, but they're described generically, right? You just see that it's a medical emergency. You don't know what it is, and that's for patients' privacy reasons. You also don't see the address of medical calls. Again, it's to give you an idea of the resource utilization in the community. Even let the firefighters see, you know, what units are on calls, and even neighboring agencies, but just at a generalized level. So we do provide detailed maps and allow for, you know, sharing of those incidents. So you can share those various ways using the share sheet on your phone. You can navigate to the incident just to sort of see how far away it is. Most people aren't going to want to navigate to the incident, but to see where it is and you know, what the traffic conditions are. You know, we show the traffic. So to give some help around that incident on its location, its distance from you. If this was a vehicle accident, for example, it might be, you know, in the morning, you get a traffic collision report, might be something that's on your commute, gives you an early heads up of maybe to go the other way, take a different route, or to watch it for a minute before you leave to see, again, does it escalate? Does a traffic pattern back up behind it? So these are these early heads up that are, you know, helpful more on a day-to-day basis, that helps build an informed community. That's sort of our slogan, build an informed community. But again, our roots are not in wildland, but they are in dispatch, and they are in keeping a community informed. So these are the kinds of notifications that go out. I'm sure you're all familiar with them. So you get a notification and it gives you this early heads up, but you're going to need other sources to really know what's going on. So behind this is going to be the county alert system. It's going to be the agency's public information officers. It's going to be media releases that come out. There's going to be other sources of information that build over time, that have the knowledge of what's really occurring on that event. So PulsePoint has functionality here, but it's not the only resource that you're going to need to really know what's going on over the duration of an incident. We talked a lot about AEDs. We do a lot of work around AEDs. We're trying to map the location of every AED in the country. And we have interfaces into the dispatch centers so the dispatchers know where the AEDs are now. So this is something that our foundation completely funds, everything around the AED registries and the interfaces into the dispatchers. And we have an initiative where we're trying to make sure that when somebody does call 911, that the dispatchers know the locations of AEDs. That's not known today. Over the last several years, dispatchers are giving CPR instructions over the phone far more often, and that's called TCPR, telecommunicator CPR. And our initiative is TAED, where the telecommunicators, the dispatchers and call takers can pass on AED locations that are near events. to try to get those AEDs out of the cabinets and to the patients, and not seeing what happened in that council meeting. Nationwide, only 6% of cardiac arrest incidents have AEDs used prior to the first responders arriving. So lots of opportunity here to make a difference, where CPR can sustain life by keeping circulation going. An AED can restart a heart. So they're very important devices, very powerful, but they're still very, very underutilized. So it's a key initiative of our foundation. And people opt in to be notified of cardiac arrests or not. So people can use PulsePoint for its other information around other types of events. But if they are CPR trained and they are willing to respond, then they can self-select to participate in nearby cardiac arrest response. So this is an example. This is a screen of, this is Southern California, but these are CPR trained individuals that are opted in to be notified by PulsePoint of a nearby need for CPR. So that's a lot more than fire stations or EMS posts are, so there's a lot of people who are trained. It's estimated that, as many as 10% of a community is trained in CPR. And are available to get things started and to sustain life until those crews arrive. So this is our goal, to have the country look like this. California largely does look like this. Almost all of California, most of the West Coast is covered by PulsePoint. So here's just some stats. I just wanted to point out a few things. You can go to pulsepoint.org/stats. These are all in real time. So we processed 709 cardiac arrests yesterday. This is today's stats. So that's a lot of cardiac arrests every single day that we're working to notify people who are nearby. This is a system-wide stat. So for every community, it's a little bit different, but this is the amount of time from the notification of the incident, the time that the crews are notified of the incident, and they actually arrive at the scene. So this is the opportunity for us to put crews on site. So this is our crews on site, or our responders on site, PulsePoint responders on site, prior to the arrival of the first responders. So you can see that 5 minutes, for most things, 5 minutes is not going to make much of a difference. But for things like cardiac arrest, where you only have 10 minutes to survive, 5 minutes makes a huge difference. And with cardiac arrest, after 6-7 minutes, and you're going to start having organ failure and maybe brain damage, and 10 minutes is like sort of the no chance of survival, but things start happening, much sooner than that. Other things like bleeding control, overdoses where you might be able to administer Narcan or EpiPens. There are other extremely time-sensitive emergencies where the community can make a difference and is being asked to make a difference in various initiatives. We have sent more than 500,000 people to nearby cardiac arrest events. So we've been doing this for 10 years now. And PulsePoint's just now approaching about 4,200 communities that it's active in. And we have several hundred in process right now, where we're working on the interfaces into the dispatch center and doing other various work to bring these communities up. So just to give you, I don't want to focus on CPR too much, but just the results. I'm just gonna, this is the CARES registry. This is where all cardiac arrests are reported in the United States. And this is just some of the science behind PulsePoint. CARES looks at PulsePoint agencies versus not PulsePoint agencies. And, Sonoma County being very fortunate to be a PulsePoint agency. And I'll just read you this first sentence here that CARES puts out. An analysis of PulsePoint agencies who are also CARES participants for 2018 and 19 showed that PulsePoint communities perform better in all the CARES performance measures. So you look at CPR rates, 37% nationwide, but 43% in PulsePoint communities. AED use, 11%, 13% in PulsePoint communities. Survival rates, 10% survival rate for cardiac arrest, not great. but 11.6% in PulsePoint agencies. So just some of the science behind what we're doing. It's right there is the PulsePoint community. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention is as you're using PulsePoint, this is something that people don't realize too much, but as you're looking at it, sometimes the type is small, or you know, it's hard to recognize what the colors mean. We really designed the app to be accessible to everyone. There's standards for accessibility. So the type is scalable. We provide alternatives to color. We provide spoken content for people who can't see. These are things that are very important in a notification type app that's being released by a government organization. We also release the app in multiple languages. So not everybody might be having English as a first language in the community. So PulsePoint is available in multiple languages. And it's not just on a phone. So you can run PulsePoint on a tablet, so it's a little bit easier to see. You can also run it on the website. So web.pulsepoint.org gives you some of the functionality, much of the functionality, just right on your desktop. So you're not needing to use, you know, a mobile device when you're at home. If you do go to download it, just a quick note that there's two apps. There's PulsePoint Respond, which is what we've been talking about, and PulsePoint AED is the app that we use to build the AED registry. So if you do go to the store, you're looking for the red app. And that's my quick overview. I knew that there would be questions, and I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions and plenty of time for KT, but that's I'll turn it back over to Roberta or to KT or whatever you guys want to do next. And hopefully you learned something about PulsePoint in there.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate that. And then what I'll do is there's a couple of questions in the chat already, and I want to give Katie an opportunity to share what she has prepared. And then we'll take the questions after that, because I got a feeling that some of them might be better answered by Katie versus Richard, or Richard versus Katie. So with that, yeah, Katie, it's all yours. I'm tossing in now, Katie.
All right, let me get my screen shared. So I am Katie McNulty. I'm the Executive Director of RegCom, and I'll talk a little bit more about exactly what RegCom is. I've been with our organization for 19 years. I started out as an AMR dispatcher, and we were awarded the service contract to provide dispatch services to Sonoma County. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to share Sonoma County's responders map with you. We do have a large amount of responders in Sonoma County willing to do CPR. So I just wanted to share that with you very quickly. And then I will go, let's see. Can you see the RegCom logo?
Looks good, looks perfect.
Okay. So this is a really brief overview of what happens when you dial 911 within Sonoma County. What is RegCom? RegCom stands for Redwood Empire Dispatch Communications. We're a joint powers authority, and we're comprised of 27 separate fire and EMS agencies within Sonoma County. And that's a mix of both public and private. We provide dispatch services to all the communities within Sonoma County. Sorry, with the exception of Cloverdale, they're dispatched through Cloverdale PD and CAL FIRE. We do still provide services to them in that we respond mutually to them. And if there is a critical patient on a 911 call, they will transfer that caller over to RegCom to receive instructions. We're located inside the Sheriff's Office building on the other side of the wall from the Sheriff's dispatchers. And we're considered a secondary public safety answering point. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Right now in California in the last year, there's now 3 ways to activate 911. The preferred method, if you're able to speak and hear, is to call 911 directly. Your other option, if you're not in a safe place or you can't hear or you can't speak, you can text your emergency now anywhere in California to 911. And hopefully you can see this graphic well enough, but this is just an Apple phone. You literally are just in the 2 line, you're putting 911 in there. And then you're going to describe your emergency and most importantly, your location. And I'll talk a little more about how important location is in a second. The other thing is there's a plethora of emergency alerting devices available now. One of the primary ones being the Apple Watch, fall notifications. There's also cardiac notifications that come from the Apple Watch. And then there's a whole suite of medical alerting devices that will dial 911 for you, or they'll take you to another alarm company that will call 911 on your behalf. We've had some really good success stories with the fall detection here in Sonoma County. The first one came within about a year ago. It was a gentleman who passed out, and the Apple Watch felt the fall, and then it checked in with the gentleman by tapping his wrist. And then after it didn't receive a response from the gentleman, it went ahead and activated 911. It told us his longitude and latitude, and that he was motionless. And we were able to get help on the road without ever talking to a human. His roommate did come in and find him down, and we were able to start talking to him and providing instructions through the watch. So I'm really happy about this new technology that's available to us. One point, a lot of people really love the idea of having their local fire department's phone number programmed into their phone for emergencies. This is a very bad idea. If you cannot speak or don't know where you're at, we can't find you. Activating 911 immediately lets us know your location, and it's so accurate now. It's in with just meters of where you're at. We can actually tell even from what part of your home you're calling from now. So always dial 911 to report an emergency. Do not try to bypass it. The other thing is, if you are lost, we've had hikers that are lost on trails. We're able to have them dial 911 to locate them. So it's an amazing tool. Here in Sonoma County, REDCOM works with approximately 9 primary service answering points. And what that means is that when you dial 911, the call first goes to law enforcement. And then once law enforcement determines that it's not a law enforcement call, that it's either fire or medical, they transfer that call over to REDCOM. Like we talked about, law enforcement will confirm the location and then the emergency, and then they'll transfer it over to us. We were talking about Richard was talking about how fast PulsePoint is. In REDCOM's area, the dispatchers are answering 911s within 10 seconds, and by contract have to do that 95% of the time. But REDCOM dispatchers are consistently answering the phone within 10 seconds, about 98% of the time. So it happens extremely quickly. We'll ask 3 questions, 3 primary questions of you, and it's our emergency medical dispatch procedure. The first thing and the most important thing we can ask is, what is the address of the emergency? If we can't get help to you, we shouldn't even show up to work that day. The second thing, we want to know your callback number in case we get disconnected. And then the third question, okay, tell me exactly what happened. Our dispatchers will spend a lot of time on that question because callers might not know what they're reporting. They might be calling in, I see a man down in the street, but that doesn't exactly say what happened. So the dispatcher will get to the bottom of what exactly is going on. And from there, they'll choose a protocol to best help that caller. So once the dispatcher has those 3 questions answered, an incident will get created into pending. And once that call hits pending, that's when the PulsePoint notification will go off. That typically happens within, so dispatchers has from the time we answer the phone to the time we hit dispatch, that has to happen in 70 seconds. So the call taker has about 35 seconds to get those 3 questions right. And then the dispatcher has about 35 seconds to dispatch out the correct resources. So the PulsePoint is going off typically within about 35 seconds of the receipt of the 911 call. And then citizens are advised if CPR is needed or not. While the units are being dispatched and responding, the call taker's still asking questions about patient condition or scene information. Everything they ask is scripted, and they're asked in the order of most importance. Once we have an idea of exactly what's going on in the scene, the dispatchers will start to provide safety instructions or life-saving instructions. Dispatchers will remain on the line with unstable callers until help arrives in most cases. And just a few examples of the things that we do: we can walk someone through being trapped by wildfire. We can walk someone through getting out of a burning building. We'll walk them through CPR, Heimlich maneuver, AEDs, getting out of sinking vehicles. We can deliver babies over the phone, we can control bleeding, just to name a few of the things we do. And that is the end of my presentation.
All right, great. Thanks, Katie. So I'm going to toss a couple questions out and then we'll get to the questions in the chat. So my first question right out of the gate is, how are you guys funded? This looks like a lot of tech, a lot of programming. There's got to be, costs involved in all this. So how do you guys receive your funding? Richard, first, I guess
so
this basically for you. Yeah.
So a couple of different ways. The first thing that is kind of unique about PulsePoint is our entire engineering team are volunteers. So they work for other, Bay Area companies. They're, engineers at, names, and those companies have their employees volunteer. So instead of, volunteering at the food bank, they're volunteering at PulsePoint, and they're using their skills to, to write code. And we have a sort of a deep bench of volunteers that have worked for us from the beginning. We have a lot of volunteers that have been with us for 10 years now. And those companies also support us, like Workday. Workday is a big company that provides a lot of resources to PulsePoint, but we don't have any engineering costs. So we have some paid staff, but we don't have engineering costs, which in the Bay Area, very, very expensive. So we control our costs that way. And then we do charge agencies for some of our services. So all the AEDs, registry, all that side of the business is all funded by our foundation. And the Respond side, where we have very technical interfaces, they're very expensive. Like in Sonoma County, we actually funded all the interface at Redcom. Our foundation paid for that, and spent, maybe a year working on that interface and all the engineering. And sometimes you've got, CAD partners, dispatch system partners, and that you've got to pay them to write their half of the interface, things like that. So sometimes we'll do that. In Sonoma County, as an example, we did pay for all that and covered the initial costs, early costs of the service. But most agencies pay us a fee to be connected to the network, to have this capability. And that's on a population basis. So Sonoma County pays less than LA County. And about 70% of our agencies pay $8,000 a year to PulsePoint. But we have a lot of agencies. So that's our primary sources. We do have donations. People donate money to us. Usually those are, corporations that are interested in cardiac arrest survival. So that's most of our funding and our mission, our 501c3 status, all that is around, cardiac arrest work.
Wow, that's actually not a bad price point. 8,000 per year for a community. That's not bad at all.
Yeah, so that's up to 300,000 population.
Okay.
Which is, where, a lot of agencies fall. And then we actually, communities that are less than 50,000 actually pay less than that.
Okay.
And then our very largest agencies that, you know, are more than, I think, 1.5 million population, pay our very highest rate, which is $28,000 a year. But that's like LA City, LA County, 10 million people. They pay $28,000 a year.
Yeah. Okay. And Katie, I don't want to toss a question to you. Can you share with us maybe one or two, like, you know, really interesting success stories of how this really went well in Sonoma County? Can you?
We've had a couple. We just had one in probably 3 weeks ago where off-duty Santa Rosa firefighter was walking past a restaurant and received alert for a choking inside of the restaurant. He responded in and was able to help with Heimlich. We've had a couple cases go to, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Survivors Reunion. It's where we annually reunite survivors with the responders that help them. We've had a couple cases go there that started with a PulsePoint alert.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So it is working. So it's worth the money spent. With that said, one of the questions in the chat had to do with one of my inspirations for bringing you guys on was a few months ago, there was a rumor floating about that PulsePoint Sonoma County was going to go away. And FireSafe Sonoma actually, unfortunately, helped propagate the rumor, but we squelched it once we found out that that was, in fact, just a rumor. So can maybe, Katie, you give us some reassurance or let us know what that looks like moving forward? Is that likely to happen? And then if, you know, I just want to put it out there that if that ever does feel like it might come to fruition, you know, I'm sure you're well aware that there are organizations like the CERT groups and FireSafe Sonoma, and I'm sure others that would be willing to pony up and help keep this thing alive.
Sure. So that the rumor started initially, PulsePoint was being funded through a nonprofit called Save Lives Sonoma. They're a very small organization aimed at CPR education within Sonoma County, and they simply just didn't have the funding to do it another year. So RegCom offered to pick up the tab for this current year and to reevaluate at the end of this year whether we would continue to pay for it. One of the goals of RegCom being a consolidated dispatch center is keeping our costs down to our member agencies. So we will want to try to find an alternate funding source, but I do not see the RegCom board of directors just letting PulsePoint go away. Okay.
So then, yeah, just keep us in mind, you know, as well as Jeff Peters, you know, I think he can help. I think if it gets to that point where funding is needed, I'm sure that we can come up with a collective to kind of pitch in to keep it going. Most definitely. Cool. So that's good.
Thank you for that support, Roberta and KT. Yeah. I know your support is there as well. So our foundation appreciates it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. We're all doing what we do for the community. And I'm not going to put you on the spot, Richard, but I am going to guess that most of the hours you put into this are volunteer hours. You know?
Yeah, I did volunteer for several years. After I left the fire service, but today I do run the foundation full time, and I do receive a salary with maybe 8 other employees, 10 other employees, something like that now.
Okay, good. Yeah, awesome. And then one of the things I do want to kind of as best we can tie this to wildland, you know, and looking at the kinds of calls, it feels like if somebody's paying attention, they can improve their situational awareness and get a sense for like, okay, if I have to evacuate, I just saw a call come in on PulsePoint, says there's a major traffic collision on, you know, Hillsburg Avenue. So I don't want to go that way. You know, so things like that can keep people appraised. Do you guys, Katie, maybe you can help with Sonoma County. Do you know if any other road conditions that are non-emergency go into the system, like, you know, like TPW, the Sonoma County Transportation Public Works? You can monitor their road conditions on their web page, I think. But does any of that get folded into PulsePoint? Do you know? Just the routine stuff, road work, road closure?
Not the routine stuff, but any kind of tree down, wires down, any kind of hazard that the fire department would have been dispatched on will end up in there.
Yeah.
And our traffic is Google traffic. So even if the incident is not showing that particular cause of the traffic, our maps will show the slowdown.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And the other cool feature is control burns and things like that. So you can know that, you know, if you see smoke and you look, it's like, oh yeah, that's probably that control burn I saw. Is there a way to filter the kinds of calls? Like for instance, you know, if I don't want to hear every, you know, single person down call, can I turn that feature off or just have fire calls turned on? Is there a
Yeah,
way?
so there is a feature coming. So right now, what's in the store is version 4.12. Right after Thanksgiving, we're holding off till after Thanksgiving. Anytime we have like 3 million users. So when you send out an update to your software, and all of a sudden 3 million people start using it, if you've got a problem, you can have 10,000 support calls, you know, in a day. That's disaster in the software business. Used to be, I've been in the software business a long time. Used to ship like 10% of your disks, and then you ship 10% more of your disks. And today, you know, everybody gets updated kind of the same time. You can control that a little bit. So, you know, we don't really want a new build to go out right before the holiday. So after Thanksgiving, probably, you know, that following week, we're shipping our next version, which has several new features in it, but not that feature. But the version we're working on right now does have the ability to filter the view of incidents by incident type. So that's probably just a couple of months away. We try to ship versions on about a 3-month cycle. So that is coming. It basically allows you to not display medical types, which, as Katie will tell you, is like 70%, 80% of the incidents. It's a large portion. So just saying don't show medical incidents, we also allow you to filter don't show recent incidents. And with just those two things, you might be down to just like three incidents or something in your view. So a lot of filtering and some other, you know, new features around what is displayed is coming, but it's probably like 3 months away, but that exact feature is on its way.
Cool. That's great news. All right. Go ahead.
Sorry. Right now, you can decide what you want to be alerted to or not alerted to. And then there's also another feature that RegCom is considering, is that breaking it down by fire district instead of watching the whole county.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's very cool. All right, I'm going to jump over and take some of the questions out of the chat and toss them to you guys. Let's see. When dispatch is notified of a false alarm, why can't the information in PulsePoint be modified or updated? Sounds like you guys just take the calls and put them out, but is there a way to close a call out on PulsePoint, I guess is the question.
Well, I mean, we do have a real-time interface that's constantly running. So as addresses change, if call types change, you know, we're going to receive it and we're going to reflect that. So probably a little bit of that, KT, depends on the dispatcher workflow. Like if they dispatch on a maybe a structure fire and they get there and it's cooking or something, I'm not sure that the dispatcher changes it to some other call type. They probably just wrap up the units and it stays a structure fire. Maybe one unit's there to clear the smoke or something. So it just kind of stays a structure fire until it closes. And once it closes, then it does drop off. But the dispatchers aren't like categorizing it down. Now, probably the other way they probably do. If it's a smoke investigation, then it turns into a structure fire. It may escalate up in type. But they're not always like recategorized on the way down. So I don't know, Katie, you probably have more on that. Well, that's
accurate.
Yeah, dispatcher process.
Yeah, and it feels like that answered Steve's question as well, I think. And then another question is, will PulsePoint be able to support the ability to listen into a call Apparently that's available in LA County. I know there are some scanner apps folks can get, and you can actually select, which dispatch center you would like to listen to in Sonoma County. I don't think it includes the control channels. I mean, the tactical channels, just the control channels maybe. But are you guys maybe looking in the future of being able to have the audio as well, or is that just outside the scope of what you're trying to do?
PulsePoint is very configurable by the agencies. Like Katie said, right now, Sonoma County is a single agency. You see all of Sonoma County. That could be broken up into individual cities or jurisdictions or other things. That's agencies can have audio, not have audio. Those are, some show different calls than others. That's really all local control.
Right now, we don't have the technology to actually tie the radio frequency into the incident through CAD.
Yeah, I have used the scanner apps on my phone. They're pretty decent actually. They're sometimes several seconds or maybe up to a minute behind compared to what I hear on the scanner, but the information still is out there. It's still within it's within a time frame that's usable for sure. Is PulsePoint Inc. and PulsePoint Foundation, is that the same entity, or are they two different enterprises?
Totally separate organizations. They get mixed up sometimes. So PulsePoint.com is PulsePoint Inc. It's a commercial advertising company or something. Nothing to do with us. And PulsePoint.org is a Bay Area foundation doing what we're doing. No association whatsoever.
Okay. And I wish there was a way to control the types of calls. Sounds like that's coming. Is there a difference between 911 calls from cell phones versus landlines as to where they are received? Yeah, Katie, do you want to talk a little bit more about the PSAPs and how that works versus, calling 911 from your cell phone? Feels like there have been some innovations in that area since last time I heard about it. So this would be good to know.
Yeah, there's major upgrades to the next gen 911 cellular in Sonoma County, actually all of California now. So what happens when you dial 911 from your home phone is it will go directly to your closest law enforcement agency, whatever jurisdiction you live in, and then they transfer that call to us. When you're on a cell phone, it will go to the closest tower and then the closest law enforcement agency or most appropriate law enforcement agency. So for instance, if you're driving down 101 in Sonoma County and you dial 911, the most appropriate law enforcement jurisdiction for 101 would actually be CHP. Yeah. So if you're on the freeway, you're going to go to CHP. If you're off the freeway, you're going to go to Santa Rosa PD. In either case, they both give us an accurate location. There is one pitfall for users that use a voice over internet phone. Sometimes if you move and do not update the VoIP phone line with your carrier, we'll think you're somewhere else. So there are some pitfalls, but for the most part, caller location is completely accurate now within just meters. And also if we lose you, you get disconnected, we have 10 minutes to continue to track your phone.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So back in the day, we used to do the, presentations and stuff. We would tell people, okay, know your dispatch center and call them direct rather than 911 on your cell phone. It sounds like if you just hit 911, it's going to be pretty effective. You don't have to do that. Awesome.
We want people to avoid dialing a landline 10-digit phone number now because it doesn't give the dispatchers an idea of where you're at. And if they're answering a 7-digit line, they're also not in emergency mode. So that they're kind of behind the 8 ball already. Yeah.
Gosh, I'm going to share this story. I shared part of it with you yesterday, Katie, when we kind of did a phone call ahead of this presentation. So this is the time of year to be trimming your oak trees, right? October, November. So I was out in my yard with a chainsaw yesterday on a ladder, trimming my oak trees. And I cut off a branch that was a little too big, I think, for my britches, and it fell and it hit the ladder and it knocked me on my keister. I did not get hurt, but reflecting on that, I was thinking, okay, number one, I'm all by myself doing this. I should have told somebody. Number two, when I moved my car out of the way so the branch wouldn't hit my car, I left my cell phone in the car. Okay, so I was just totally setting myself up for a disaster there. So I won't be doing that again anytime soon. Next time I do that, I'll make sure I have that cell phone with me. So if I am immobile or trapped by a tree branch, I can get it and call that 911. So, but folks, don't do what Roberta does. Almost always don't do what Roberta does. All right, let's see. Anything else in the queue here? So Priscilla asked, so to clarify, we should not give people the Redcom number to call instead of using the cell phone anymore. That's what I understand.
That's correct. Yeah, you should always dial
the cell phone. Yeah, I'm right there with you, Priscilla. I did not know that. So this is good. If that's your only takeaway from today's presentation, it's a good takeaway.